So thank you and welcome for taking the time to join us. I'm excited about today's session, not just because the topic for me is important, but it's really about what we're learning in developing effective leaders on the African continent. And for us, this can then be extended to developing leaders in emerging markets. And so this topic is of particular passion and purpose because this is what we do best at Zanga African Metrics. So we're going to spend the next hour just looking into this topic, and I'll create some time before the top of the hour to actually answer any questions that you might have. So welcome. Thank you for joining us. Today, we are looking in our webinar series at why good leadership looks different everywhere. And our occupational psychologist who normally facilitates these sessions is not chairing today. I am stepping in and I will introduce myself in a bit, but we also say shout out to Doreen, who is our occupational psychologist and brings the science to the practice of leadership. So, what we want you to get and take away from today is not only an appreciation of why good leadership looks different everywhere, but we want you to get some insights on how to lead effectively in any environment without losing your authenticity or influence. Very interesting question. Yesterday, we were in our weekly masterclass series, and we came up with 3 pressures that come up in organizational context in terms of your career. 3 pressures that lead people to feel that they need to conform to a definition of or a profile of leadership that may not be totally authentic to themselves. So, what we're looking at here is yes, leadership looks different in different places across the world because the context is different. And how do you then use that knowledge to appreciate how you show up as a leader in different environments? And the 3 pressure points that really impact leaders and let them feel like they're diluting themselves are linked to trying to look professional, number 1. It is because maybe the Western approach and the competencies that we read about, that we sit in trainings about, give us a profile that presents a way to be effective as a leader. And that way I can be good because I'm using the right words and I can be par on par with somebody, a manager in my similar role or level in London or New York. So there's a westernization about what professionalization is. And that's a pressure to conform, to fit, to understand that. The second one, and that is another pressure point, is to be able to be seen by the people who promote. Very interesting. So when we talk about the second pressure point, it's about who here holds the cards and how can I make sure that they see me, they read what I'm doing, and they're happy so that they're going to position me for my next level. So that's a pressure point. Sometimes it's not just about getting the work done, it's who really, measures and rewards what I do. How do I shine in front of them? And the third one, which is very interesting, is about the pressure of protection and being safe. How do I show up without jeopardizing my future career ambitions? How do I sometimes challenge and contribute and still stay safe? So the third pressure point is safety. So we're looking at all of these and how the dynamics play in different contexts. So welcome. Thank you for joining us. This is going to be an interesting session. And as you engage with us, we ask you to put on your camera. We know that depending on what situation you're in, it may not be possible, but if it is, we want to see you. And if you're not speaking, please keep your mic on mute. The chat is open and free throughout. We want this to be interactive. When something lands, when you have a question, or just even a comment, maybe somebody else can benefit from your interpretation, from your experience. Please use the chat to ask questions, make comments, or engage with us. This is what this is for. So who are we? We are Zanga African Metrics. We believe that developing leaders in what is called high context markets. This is developing countries, is something that requires. Hello? It's difficult, but there's need to strike a balance. Hello? I would just like to check if you can hear me.
Yes, we
Thank you.
can.
Thank you. So, what we appreciate is an understanding that leadership and how people operate in organizations and achieve their career ambitions is different in different parts of the world. And because of that, we are an HR company that has provided resources to support understanding what your strengths are, what your areas of development are, and how you integrate that into your career. This is for individuals who want to be more deliberate and intentional about positioning yourself for the next level. But it's also for the HR practitioners who are in charge of the talent pipeline, supporting teams that are cohesive and building leaders that are effective and not stressed. So, our work here is complementary to people development. And our leadership approach is dual mastery. We support individuals to operate in environments that are complex, meaning as you rise, the different levels and types of responsibilities you have increase. How do you improve yourself as a leader and be effective in the environment to deliver the results that are required of you? And our approach is dual mastery. Self mastery and contextual mastery. We build you up, the self, but we support you to be effective in any context, the contextual mastery. And that's what we do best at Zanga African Metrics. We're based in Zambia, but we serve the continent and we bring our approaches online and in person to actually address some of the challenges individuals face to achieve their career plans and ambitions. We help you even through our coaches plan your career. We support organizations to build the teams and have the skills that help people within the organization achieve not just the results for the organization, but also feel like they're growing and are able to even bring more contribution and value to the organization. So that's what we do, and that's who we are. Join us every Wednesday, weekly at 18 hours. We have a masterclass, and this is more specific and directed to the career plan and leadership journey. This is where we talk about what does it take to be an effective leader? What does it take to position yourself for the next level? This is a hands-on interactive masterclass that we have curated and launched in 2026 to recognize that sometimes your application of what you learn in training rooms or on the job experience at work requires another space where you can bring it together for yourself. And so our masterclass is about those ambitious people who are on a leadership journey, want to have more deliberate plans for their career, and understand how to position themselves for the next level, whatever that is. And we help design that, we help plan it, and we help actually step into what it will take to achieve it. Another insight is our human capital report. We've now collected information from multiple sectors, multiple countries on the African continent, and we're learning what matters to you. We're learning what it means to actually develop effective talent in the context of an African development agenda. And so this is very exciting and will be launched soon. But let's get today. Welcome today to our session in the webinar series on what it takes to lead in different environments. My name is Nankonde Kasonde Vondenbroek, and I'm the team leader for the Zanga African Metrics coaching faculty. We have 40 coaches who support our methodology, are certified to not only deliver it, but actually take you to that result you're looking for. I'm one of the 40 coaches who are based in 9 African countries. And in Zambia, we have several coaches who are also supporting and delivering our methodology. I'm an international award-winning executive coach, and I'm happy to have been recognized for these methodologies you're receiving today. We create these platforms and these places for free because we believe knowledge should be transferred. Application is something you can come to work with us on. How serious are you in actually seeing these results manifest? We are ready to take you to the next level in the application. But in the understanding and appreciation, we provide the spaces to give this for free because everybody should have the opportunity to be successful and be the best version of themselves. I've worked over 20 years with governments, multinationals, and different types of organizations to build great leaders. And so today, I'm taking up the role of supporting the webinar and facilitating the session, the conversation, and some questions. So what are we really looking at today? We're looking at 3 key shifts that are important when you're working in different contexts. What is amazing is that what we have seen is often people do not achieve their ambitions or their career goals for leadership, not because it's just a question of skills, but even if you have the skills, it's your adaptation and ability to apply them in the context, and the context being the situation in which you're operating. We've learned that we can build competencies, but the application of those competencies to deliver the results are dependent on your understanding of the context. And that's why we're moving from universal models to culturally responsive leadership. Leadership that understands how do people engage in this environment? What is the most important priority when it comes to working with the team, working with our customers? And how does that change how I execute my role? How does it change how I build relationships, cross-functional or even with the customer? So we're moving from leader-centric focus to more who is in your environment? Who are your key stakeholders? Who are the people who are following you, who are reporting to you? And how are you aligning contextually to your environment? Because that is actually the job to be done. Whenever you get into a role, it is important to understand that the job description describes where the organization is and their expectations of how you fit in to achieve their objectives. But the job to be done is dependent on the season you're entering the organization. I call that the dispensation. You need to appreciate that what was assumed or presented in the job description is actually going to be delivered in a specific environment and season of operations. And that context can lead to what's happening in the economy. That context can lead to what's happening with your supply chain. It may happen, like you've seen in some sectors, where there's a breakdown of services. So you can be coming in to grow the company, but you realize that the context and the season that you actually take up the role, there's a breakdown in the supply chain. So your focus now has to shift to align to meet the contextual need. And this is where people struggle and fail. Because if you don't see the context, you are misaligned in what you think impact is. And so the third area we're shifting is moving from rigid application. This is my job, this is my role, these are the processes I work with, to adaptive expression. There's a difference with people who, when you are in the meeting and you come in and make your presentation, propose a solution because you understood what the challenge is. There are people who bring knowledge to meetings, and there are people who bring intelligence to meetings. They bring their knowledge, and they're able then to understand, because of what my recommendation is proposing, we will need to adapt what I think is solution number 1 for us to take into consideration the fact that we don't have the full team capacity, the fact that we have challenges with our main supplier, the fact that politically our regulator has changed some of the compliance areas. So you have a difference to somebody who's come in very well equipped in their technical skills, is part of a meeting that's solving a real business challenge and presents a solution, but doesn't take into consideration the other factors in the context. That is rigid application. And then when we get challenged to our solutions, what are we responding to? Are we responding to that our solution has been rejected? Or are we really understanding the intelligence that's happening in the room, which is saying, your solution is great, but how can we implement it with these other variables? That's why there are different levels in organizations, because the critical thinking requirement increases and shifts. So to work and be effective and rise, you need to be able to adapt and be able to express your intelligence through that lens. And finally, we're going to look at the tools to help you do that reflection. Start that ability to now be effective in any context and lead across different cultures. So tell me, where are you stuck? This is our agenda for today. Where do you think you're working well with the leadership tools and knowledge you have? And what is that stretch for you? I want you to be able to come in here, having heard this with a goal to understand, okay, so for me to get to the next level, I think I need to work on my contextual alignment. I think I need to work on my adaptive expression. I think I need to work on the fact that I've been operating at a level of knowledge and not at a level of intelligence in the places where I am showing up in meetings. It's important to have that self-reflection because this is not just imparting knowledge without putting it into a way that it's going to land and make a difference for your investment in this hour. You're expensive people. Your time here has to translate in a benefit for you and a benefit for the place you work. Without those two, it means that the time we're going to spend is going to pass. It's not going to stick and it's not going to last. So what are we seeing? Universal leadership models that we are all taught to master. Be a charismatic leader, be a democratic leader. Servant leadership is important. Be a visionary. All of these are important, but remember, they are models of leadership. And it's so important to understand that sometimes the response and the difference towards what's actually happening on the ground is that maybe the model is not fitting or applicable to the context you're navigating. So don't get me wrong. We're not saying that these leadership models are not best practice, that they're not good, that they're not relevant. What we're saying is are they applicable to the context you're navigating? That's what sets people apart. Learn different models. Learn to be a servant leader. Learn to understand what it means to be a transformational leader. Learn to understand what it means to be a charismatic leader. Your knowledge increases with your ability to have different definitions and reference points so that depending on the context, you know what the context needs and which type of leadership model you need to bring in. Many times we are shown that this is the model and this is how we need to behave and adopt and measure ourselves against how am I doing in terms of being a servant leader? How am I doing in terms of being a transformational leader? This session is not going into what these definitions are. It's just recognizing that there are different leadership styles that you can adopt. Our point here today is to say, make sure the style is fit for purpose in the context. I hope you're getting it. And I hope you're seeing where some of your own adjustments need to be made, but also seeing where, okay, you're doing well. Yes, I understand these models, and I've been testing their application, and I'm getting results in my role. So let's now move into the myths that we often hear. The first myth is of universal leadership. Most leadership models fail when they're exported because when they're taken in the exact box, copy and paste, they fail because leadership is exactly that. It is leadership. If it works here, we assume that it can work anywhere. That's the first false myth. Leadership is not universal. The principles can be universal, but its impact depends on the culture, values, and the context where it's being applied. So leadership is not universal. The principles are universal. And we've seen this with research. We've seen that what is judged as good leadership may not actually match local norms or how you get results from a team. What we see in some leadership styles of be direct, look people in the eyes, that shows confidence and assertiveness. In some cultures, it just shows disrespect and it shows and it creates fear. So you need to understand that the leadership styles and the models have to be adapted to appreciate some additional information. And this is what we do at Zanga African Metrics. We help you make sense of how the model needs to be applied in the context you're in. That is what will make you a good leader in that context. because culture shapes what people expect in authority figures. So the difference and what sets people apart as they move into leadership roles is those that get this and those that don't. And research has shown it. If we're able to appreciate it, you start to understand that it's not about changing who you are. It's about understanding how your leadership is received in different environments. And that's why when we talk about team dynamics, when you change roles, you actually change potentially expectations, demands, or the people you're managing. Those are the different environments. Those are the different contexts. What you need to understand is you're not broken necessarily in these areas, and we can take it personal. Your context has changed. So, how does your leadership style and approach need to also adapt to fit the new context? If you're not careful, one of the principles we really drive in our work is understand that there's two people. There's you, and then there's the role. You and the role are two different people. So what you're adapting is to the role and what comes with the role, the stakeholders and the context. Then look at you and see what strengths do I have that match this context? What strengths do I have that are overused in this context and I need to tone down? And that they become weaknesses. They're not going to work with this team. They're not going to work in this organization. This is where people now get frustrated and understand the stress in their careers is coming from a misalignment. And then we take it personal and think, why am I not getting it? What's wrong with me? And we now step down and start thinking about we are less than, when actually our information that's driving us to conclusions is incomplete. Second shift on cultural expectations and followership. Why doing the right leadership behaviors may still get you into problems. We think that if I lead and empower others, I will earn trust and credibility automatically. If I set and follow and show them by example that it's important to be serious, it's important to be firm, I will get the results. But what we appreciate is know your stakeholders, understand who are the key people who are part of you achieving the results. You need to trust your followership based on their expectations and understand what is credible leadership for this team and how does it differ. So even if I come in with an approach where I'm very results oriented, how do I look at the expectations of this team? What are the practices, the norms, the behaviors that help them respect me and also deliver results with me? And I will find maybe it is not coming in and shouting at everybody. Why is this not done? How are we going to meet our targets if we don't get this done? Maybe if I start to read the room and understand my stakeholders, I'll still get my result, but my approach will shift. Instead of forcing and imposing what my assumptions are, maybe I'll ask questions. I'll be more effective with this team dynamic by shifting to how they're responding to how results will be attained. If you don't have those different tools to draw on, you will be limited in how you can apply them. It's like they say, if your only tool is a hammer and you have a nail, you take that to everything to solve the problem. But that is not the solution necessarily for everything. Leadership research has also shown, and we wanted you to see the research because you've got to see what is it grounded in. Is it just Zanga? Is it just Nankonde? No, we've studied this. That's why our solutions are tailored. That's why the information we're sharing with you today to understand that leadership is not the same everywhere. Not because you have to go to another leadership class and learn new leadership models. It's in the application that it's not universal. The principles are aligned. I want you to just put in the chat. Are you getting what we're talking about? Are you following? Because if you're not, then this is a one-sided conversation. What are you getting about your own leadership and adapting it? Please put this in the chat because we want you to understand that you're already positioned and primed for your next role. But your positioning and how you go into it requires you to understand that there's work to be done at the self level, your own personal development, but there's work to be done, which is the game changer at the contextual mastery. You understanding what does this role and the context that the organization is in right now need from me to adapt as I'm going in? That's what separates people. And research has shown it. And so the data shows us that you've got to be able to see what is the data telling you and what is the mismatch potential here. How do you empower people and come in when there are high distance cultures in organizations? So if there's a hierarchy in the organization and people are used to following the boss and seeing you as the one who has all the solutions, you've got to understand that even if you want to use the leadership approach of transformation on empowering people, you need to recognize that the people in the room and you're working with are looking to you for solutions. So you need to look at what does empowerment mean here? Because whatever I say, when I speak, matters. If I speak fast, they're going to take what I'm saying and be contributing according to that. Maybe empowerment in this context requires me to speak last, allow them to share some of their thoughts and their experiences. Because when I speak, it's taken that this is the decision. So you would now adapt. This is so key because you'll realize that I thought I've been empowering the team. But if you're the first one speaking in a structure that is hierarchical, the empowerment there does not land. And then again, you may have an approach of sharing information and being direct and with people. But what you might want to solicit in advance is some insights from them, get clarity from the team. All of these are saying your behaviors matter. How you show up, how you speak shows how you are using the data that you're collecting to collect data from the places where you are leading and in your role. In your next meeting, do a scan, read the room. This is what we call observing the environment. Read the data in the room. Who's chairing the meeting? What is the agenda of the meeting? What are the things that generally you know are said or not said in meetings? This is data. This is telling you the culture that's going to receive the information. This is the culture that's going to receive or reject your leadership. And what we find is if you don't read what's happening in the room, if you don't understand your stakeholders, the result may land or the result may not land because the intelligence didn't come through. So in hierarchical systems that are very typical of African organizations, we have yet to move to those flat, agile systems. And even when they're flat and agile, there's still some form of everybody needs to know who the boss is. Because without that, accountability then becomes difficult. So how do you bring in some of these other approaches like participatory leadership, transformational leadership, servant leadership? You've got to understand that what we read in the books, what we're taught, has to now be brought to the reality on the ground for you to understand how to apply it in that given context. And the research shows it. The third shift you need to start thinking about, and I hope this is helping you reframe and rethink about what you thought best practice leadership is generally, and then look at yourself and how you're leading. Now, when we talk about leadership, it's not leadership by function of your title, by function of where you sit in the hierarchy of the organization. It's about leading at every level. Wherever you are in the structure, you are leading the delivery of results, leading from your function and contribution, even though you may not be sitting in the chair that has the title. So, adaptive leadership without compromise. How do you adjust your leadership style without losing your identity? The key here is that to be authentic in leadership, sometimes we think we need to speak in a certain way. We need to approach things and structure our conversations, our meetings in a certain way. Because we think that if we adapt, we may be coming across as not effective, as weak. And so we follow the script of what we believe an effective leader should show up. But great leaders are ready to adjust. You know yourself. That's self-mastery. Understand that you have certain gifts and talents. You were created with certain abilities by virtue of the fact that these are the things that make you effective in certain types of roles and professions. Doesn't mean you can't do other professions, but your self-awareness and understanding of what your strengths are helps you align them to where you can effectively respond in organizational situations and roles that you have to deliver. So great leaders understand their strengths and understand that the different contexts are always going to reflect the weaknesses. Weaknesses being areas I still need to develop because these don't come naturally to me. And as we're developing those areas, sometimes we want to bring in what we believe is the best way to show that I know this leadership capability. I know how to deliver this result. And then you move away from what is authentic to you. It's very interesting sometimes to hear how people speak or how people deliver results. You will, when they're under pressure, you will know the real person because under pressure, it's not sustainable to be presenting in that way and speaking in that way because the stress removes all the guards and you just bring your real self. That's how we know a person's authenticity. So I just want us to summarize through the research that leadership principles travel, but behaviors must adapt. So when we talk about what we touched on earlier, broad ideas like ethics, vision, and inspiration, yes, they're universal and they're important, but how they're expressed differs according to the context. We build leaders at Zanga to help you understand your strengths through our assessments and your areas for development so that you can appreciate that these universal best practice leadership competencies that are important to develop, how am I doing in general? And then in the actual place where your tasks, your team, and your function requires results, you see which ones are helping you get them and which ones actually are not yet sharp enough to support those results. That's where you need to grow. And don't get frustrated because people leave roles too early. You find that that misalignment manifests as stress and frustration. Or this team, I can't work with these people. My line manager is too difficult. It may just be a misalignment. What you are trying to translate as leadership principles is not actually adapted to the context. There's nothing wrong with what you understood about leadership. It's how you're applying it in the situation that you have been placed to generate the results. So what we're looking for is how do you become agile as an individual, culturally, with values and belief systems, and how you then take that to adapt where you need to get results. Because when we talk about leadership, it's the place where you influence the outcome of results. So to be balanced in this, you need to understand that your core leadership values are your anchors. You need to hold what is important to you and see how these also fit what's important to the organization. That's why organizations have values, because these are the things that we say, if these things are present, we will achieve our goals. And the reason organizations have shared values is because we all come from different backgrounds. We all come from different experiences. So if we all come in with what we all believe is important, we'll be pulling in different directions. And it's so important to align people towards to say, these are our shared values. Because if we show up in these ways, if we're accountable, if we are professional, if we have integrity, then everybody complying to these will help us create an organizational culture and a brand that is seen and felt. So your core leadership values are anchors for leadership and alignment, but they're also cultural values. And these impact your leadership because they affect how you are received. So this is the container, this is the team, this is the organization. I can have these values that I think are important, be professional, be accountable, have integrity. But then when you layer them against the cultural organizational values, you now get the intelligence we're talking about. What is rewarded here and what is reprimanded here? How do people engage with each other? Is it always through the boss? What is the culture? How do people relate to accountability? Is it the team shies away from calling out individuals, or the team prefers to be supported as a collective? Or do we allow people to shine? Yes, the report I did secured us that 2 million kwacha, $2 million contract. I did it. So you need to understand what's happening here because the rejection is coming from those cultural values when you speak, when the team interacts with each other. If I'm coming in and I'm taking credit for that contract, I want to celebrate that, yes, what I did made a major contribution. But if I'm in the team or an organizational culture where that's frowned upon, I will now be creating enemies and I will now be creating problems where people will not want to work with me. And the opposite is also applicable. In power distance hierarchical structures, you must understand the values. You speaking up and challenging the boss may be not accepted here. So they'll let you talk, but afterwards, you will now have issues. So you must align to the context, the values, and also the shapers, the cultural implications. So how do you adapt your behavior? How do you adapt into the context? These are your personal adjustments, your communication style. You change the way you speak. Do you speak first? Do you speak last? Do you listen to what's happening? Do you come in with a warm, supportive approach, or do you come in with a approach that goes straight into business? The context is going to actually guide you on how to be effective in it, but you need to step back to read and get some intelligence. This is what we talk about observing the room. It's almost like a map. Wherever you're working, as soon as you are engaged, get the map. Start reading the map and understand how do things work here. Because often your onboarding onboards you into reporting lines. And this is what we do, even from the HR perspective. We onboard people into reporting lines, not into the cultural and contextual system they're entering, because that's your place of operation. So, from a practitioner perspective and supporting adjustment, learning and development plans come in and performance improvement plans come in because what they're trying to say is how you're showing up is not landing in this context. So we think maybe you need to be more confident. We think maybe you need to communicate more effectively. I hope you're getting me. We think you need to go to a leadership course. That is what's happening and what you may be feeling. But what's behind it is something that we really want you to take away from here. It's a misalignment of your approach in the context you're in. And once you get this, you now start to see how you yourself can already do some work before HR intervenes or before your line manager intervenes. And you study the environment. So, how do you study the environment? You get feedback indicators. These are the reception indicators. These will show you what's happening in how you're engaging with other people. And these are the things that come as pain points to HR, pain points to the team leader or line manager or to the CEO, that there's a breakdown of trust. People are resisting the change. The people that are being led are not following and supporting. I hope you're seeing the symptoms that come across and you're getting some intelligence about what is behind it. Because when you understand this and you're building skills for effective decision-making approach, understand, yes, you can build them generally. It might be a genuine gap, but it's about the context because every team has a different dynamic. So in this particular team, you may be building decision-making approach and understanding how to be more effective. You get promoted, you move to another branch, you move to another region. That context, you'll find that decision-making may not be the issue. In fact, that the one that comes up now is your communication style. So it can be confusing when you're thinking, when am I going to be effective enough? When am I going to be able to say I'm comfortable in my role? You never really get comfortable because we're all on a learning journey. It's just understanding what is it that I have consolidated in terms of my expertise and skills that makes me comfortable when I have to confront different contexts. I can respond easily, and I have the indicators that show me that I'm being received well. But what is the new information from this context that's guiding me to a different understanding? That is where you're learning about what you need to do to be effective in that context. And so for us, we use tools to help you fast track, get some data quickly for decision making for yourself, from an organizational perspective, understand where are the strengths in the individuals and how do we support them through coaching to now apply it into context. When we're onboarding people, how do we help them to quickly understand that, yes, this is your functions, these are your tasks, and this is your meeting cadence to get your results, but these are also the strengths that will be applicable and work for you. These are the cultural dimensions that operate in this place. Our development tools help you have some inputs into how you're going to operate and navigate. We do it for individuals. We also do it for line managers, people with supervisory responsibilities. This is one of our best diagnostic tools to help you land in the context. 360s are sometimes seen as, hey, that's their chance to get back at the leader. What we see is that 360 is information about the context. So you now, as a team leader, want to understand, okay, this feedback is because which perception indicators are showing up? What's happening in terms of the adaptations I need to make for this context? It's not about you not changing. No, if they can't work with me, that's not my problem. No, it's about understanding how are you being received? What is being rejected? Not because there's something wrong with you. There's something that needs to be adapted in your approach and how you're applying this to this team. HR practitioners send people to development courses, support performance improvement plans, coaching conversations, give line managers coaching skills. What they're trying to answer beneath all of this is who do we need you to become to be effective in this team? And how can we use data? And that's what our assessment's about, to give you information to help you adjust and grow in the process. It brings peace to everyone. So I just want to close with leadership isn't broken. What is broken is the assumption that these models and styles, I can take them anywhere and they'll be applicable everywhere. Let us help you from Zanga to lead where you are with who you're leading so that you can be effective. Our approach is understanding your strengths as an individual, self-mastery, and supporting you to master yourself, because leadership begins within. Leadership begins with you first. And then once you've got that grounding, we help you understand now, how do you take it into the different roles, different expectations, different relationships that are key to you achieving your results. One of the greatest leadership hacks, leadership tips you can take away from this session is understanding that it is not another leadership course. It is not another coaching session that is going to help you if you don't bring this information we've shared today to that leadership training, to that coaching session. You bring the context. What are the cultural indicators? What are the contextual factors that are important here? Then how do I adapt? What are my strengths in it? Where do I need to work on in terms of my competencies? That's what makes people land. And that's what makes your leadership not a lottery, a gamble. It makes you an intelligent ally to any organization. This is what sets people apart. This is what helps HR see who fits into the talent pipeline. And as they're doing that, the succession plan. So our conversation here is about you as a leader in your own right, but it's also about the people who support you, the talent managers, the HR manager. This is to help you understand that the symptoms you're feeling, the source of the diagnostic is the adaptation. Build the competencies, but support how they land. Do it with us. We can help you with the diagnostic tools. We can help you with the coaching. We can also help you now see trainings, performance improvement plans, feedback to manager sessions in a completely different light. So I'm going to stop here. I recognize that we're almost at the top of the hour. This is a game changer. This is what sets people apart. This is how people, you can find that they're not rising. I'm just as good as this person who we started with, who were at the same level. But why were they promoted and why wasn't I? There's a reason. Because when you see the adaptation into context, they can have the same competencies. But when they walk into the meeting, the way they handle the meeting, they've read the room. We teach you how to read rooms. We teach you to understand the stakeholders, the environment. So these are the results that matter, and make the adjustment to what you thought is important in this space. That's how people become presidents, become CEOs, rise to become founders that go on to build successful companies. It's a leadership journey we're all on. It's a leadership journey I'm on. But through 15 years of experience, we've now come to the fact that save some people some stress. Let's share what we're learning. Let's learn together. Try it. Join our sessions. Come, give us feedback. Send us feedback. Apply it and see what happens. Because for us, it's about you as an effective person in your role and context is a leader that is contributing to growing a business, that is growing the economy, that is actually changing the opportunity that Africa offers to the world. So I'll stop here and take any questions or comments that you have. We have tools we can support you with. We will share information about how you can contact us. It was on the last slide, but we'll also share it to everybody who registered for the session. And we will send you a tool that we use just to help you start thinking about, is it self-mastery or contextual mastery that I need some help with? Just a few questions to answer. Start applying it. Don't waste your investment of an hour here. So in respect to confidentiality, I'm going to stop the recording so that any questions are kept here and they're not part of what is going to go out to the public domain because we want you to be safe. So I'm going to stop the recording.